Have you ever heard the saying that trauma gets stored in the body? And it was like that moment that made sense for you because probably like myself, you struggle with a lot of trauma growing up, especially childhood trauma. And as you get older, you find yourself having more problems. And every time you turn around, you're being told that it's all in your mind or you're overthinking it or you're exaggerating. But when you finally do find somebody that talks about how trauma actually does get stored in the body, it confirms something for you because you're like, I knew I was onto something. And today, my friend, I'm going to show you and explain how trauma is stored in a way that you've never seen before. We're going to connect Eastern and Western medicine, bridging the gap with science. But you're going to notice how trauma interacts and reacts within the body differently than just daily stress. And this is where I created something called the 5 layers of energy. When a person first experiences trauma, what happens is that trauma ripples through the 5 layers of energy really fast. The first thing that gets picked up during trauma is the nervous system is the first thing to react. HPA triggers the body to want to produce cortisol from the adrenal cortex. So this A means adrenals. The adrenals produce a stress hormone called cortisol. HPA here prepares the body for fight or flight. Is the nervous system. That's the first thing that reacts to a traumatic event. So the second layer of energy, organs and glands, what you'll notice is when the body does go into fight, flight, or freeze, the body, it's called the sympathetic nervous system, the SNS, helping you prepare to fight. To flight mean run away, or sometimes you can just freeze when the body's too overwhelmed. But if you look at the sympathetic nervous system and you see what organs and glands are affected, you'll see a chain reaction. Just to give you a few so I don't overwhelm you, the first thing is, of course, the adrenal glands are used to produce cortisol. But secondly, you'll notice a huge imbalance within the digestive tract. And the reason why you can see a huge imbalance with the digestive tract is, number one, the blood flow that goes through the intestines creates something called peristalsis. And peristalsis helps a person move food and bowels through their intestines. But when the body's in fight or flight, the body's utilizing that blood flow being pushed towards the main muscles and heart to help you fight or flight. Therefore, there's no peristalsis going down in the digestive tract, and you can start noticing constipation issues if there's not enough blood flow going through the intestines, creating that wave-like movement to help you move your food and your poop. So then what happens is, now we know the digestive system turned off on you and the adrenal glands were working on overdrive to make sure that you can fight or run away as fast as you can, flight. Now, the third layer of energy is going to be the muscular system. Now that the sympathetic nervous system is turned on to help you fight or flight, the muscular system gets tense and gets prepared for fighting or flighting. And you're gonna notice the muscles of the quads get really tight on the person. You're gonna notice a lot of trauma is gonna be stored in this muscle. But secondly, there's a deep hip flexor muscle called the iliac psoas muscle here. And this muscle gets really tight, which will cause hip pain and lower back pain. The fourth layer is going to be the emotions. Now, the psyche communicates with the nervous system, is going to notice that this adrenaline, this cortisol level, the heart rate being really elevated, breathing being elevated. The psyche now is getting ready for survival. So the perspective of a person changes. Even after trauma, this becomes inhibited into the nervous system, the organs and glands, the muscular system, and then the psyche can be stuck in the thought process of always thinking about safety and security. If you look up neuroscientist Paul McLean, you'll see that we have 3 layers to the brain. We have the reptilian brain, we have the emotional brain, and then the outside part of the brain is going to be the intellectual. Basically, you thinking, creating, learning new languages, that's the intellectual. The body and the psyche do not care about none of that when a traumatic event occurs. It only cares about the reptilian part of the brain, which is safety, security, substance, and sex. And then last but not least, the 5th layer of energy is going to be the subconscious mind. Trauma gets stored within all layers of energy right when it occurs, versus daily stress becomes subconscious over time. No, that trauma you went through, it's subconscious right away. It zaps right through the 4 layers of energy before the 5th layer, which happens to be the subconscious. Now, I know that can be a lot of information, so we can slow down a little bit and I can break this down a little more for you. For something to become subconscious, it has to be repetition and repetition, repetition, but not with trauma. So what tends to happen from here is that a person's going to develop something I like to call a sensitive nervous system, meaning their nervous system from that traumatic event is now on higher alert at all times. In fact, if you go look up some studies, you can see multiple studies actually that show a person that experiences trauma usually has elevated cortisol levels. Your trauma could have been 5-10 years ago, but you can still have elevated levels of cortisol from that one traumatic event because your nervous system is now wired to always be on high alert. We have something called the autonomic nervous system, a part of the nervous system that controls things automatically. It branches out to two things. Number one is something called the parasympathetic nervous system. We can call it PNS. It's also known or can be known as the rest and digest part of the nervous system. And then we have the other side of the nervous system, fight or flight part, which is the sympathetic nervous system, which is fight, flight, or freeze. When a person has trauma, you're going to be stuck in the sympathetic nervous system side. Why? Well, what triggers the sympathetic nervous system? You have the nervous system, but you have the HPA, hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal. What hormone does the adrenals produce? Cortisol. Cortisol activates the fight or flight system. Okay, so as you can see, trauma, a traumatic event, goes through something I call the 5 layers of energy extremely fast. The nervous system, the organs and glands, the muscular system, the emotions, your emotions. And what does emotions mean? Energy, emotion. And then the 5th layer, which is going to be subconscious. Trauma becomes subconscious right away. So when an individual experiences trauma and they walk away, yes, their body does store trauma for the simple fact that their nervous system is wired differently now. Now we're going to go learn on exactly when your trauma took place and connect to how it's going to be affecting not only just stored in the body, but exactly what 5 layers of energy you're going to be struggling with the most. Okay, so I'm gonna break this down for you. The 5 layers of energy, I matched up with each part of your body. At the end, you're gonna notice a nice little connection here. Think about the trauma that you feel affected you the most throughout your life. And as you think about that, put the age. And if you can't remember the exact age, give me an estimation. But as I go down this row here, you're gonna notice a lot of things you can possibly relate to. With one common question you're gonna have. Most of you are gonna have that same common question, and I will have that answer for you after I do this part right here. So the first thing we have to look at is what age did your trauma take place, right? So you're going to write that down first, age. Secondly, if we're going to use the nervous system because it's the first layer of energy. The first question I have for you is if the nervous system being fight or flight or freeze or the parasympathetic nervous system, if one has trauma, what side you think is going to be turned on? Well, we know that the fight, flight, or freeze system is going to be turned on because we now know that you have a sensitive nervous system. So that side of the nervous system is going to be turned on no matter what age that you're at. The next step is organs and glands. So if you're one that had trauma from the time you were born to 8 years old, then we're going to automatically know that your adrenals are going to be the gland that gives you the most problems. How does one know they have problems with the adrenals? Anxiety, can't sleep at night, blood sugar problems are going to be the main ones, or getting tired after working out, like it's more exhausting for you, getting dizzy when you stand up. Those are all signs that the adrenals are being taxed. If you're one that had trauma from 8 to 14 years old, we know that you're going to have problems with your adrenals and reproductive system. So men, do you have problems when it comes down to your prostate? Women, do you have PCOS, or do you know someone that does have PCOS? Look at the lower abdominals and see if the lower abdominals, meaning your lower belly area, is inflamed. If you had trauma from 14 to 21, your main organ and gland that may be giving you problems is your digestive issues or digestive system. From 21 to 28, we know the heart and lungs are going to be something that we have to look out for. Trauma from 28 to 35, thyroid and parathyroid is something I'll be looking for. But there's a connection here. I usually find from 8 to 14 can also cause problems right here with the thyroid. And then with pineal gland and the pituitary and hypothalamus, this right here is usually an effect from everything down below. Now I'm going to go through each of these one by one. So now you have the age. Now we all should have fight, flight, or freeze. And now we're starting to see some connections between the glands. But now I'm going to go for one at a time. So I'm going to work with from 0 to 8 years old first. If the adrenals are the main problem for this individual, I'm going to find the legs, feet, and the deep part of the hip flexor called the iliac psoas muscle be really tight. So you can find this person having back pain, knee pain, ankle pain, because that hip flexor being tight along with the quads are going to pull the pelvis forward into an anterior pelvic tilt and put a lot of pressure on your knees and your feet. Emotionally, I'm going to be looking for stress when it comes down with family, friends, trust issues, fatigue, one that has anxiety and stress, which I mentioned earlier. Money stress is gonna be big. Getting laid off or people losing their jobs around you. If you see something taken off your card, like an expense taken off your card that you forgot about or you didn't actually make and it was a mistake, whew, that's gonna trigger you, right? This is a lot of me right here. That's why. Racing mind, it's hard for this person not to be overthinking all the time. Moving is gonna be a trigger for this person. Being alone can be a trigger for this person. Losing a loved one or losing a job is going to be a trigger. Subconsciously, this person can be stuck in an archetype, which Carl Jung explains is a collective unconscious characteristic that we all go through. So each of us are playing some type of character right now that has a personality trait that is giving us a life that we want or don't want anymore. So if a person has trauma and they're out of balance with the first 4 layers of energy, with their nervous system, the organs and glands, the muscular system, subconsciously they may be stuck in a victim mentality, thinking that everything is against them or nobody likes them or they always have bad luck. Truth be told is that the first thing we need to do with this individual is we need to give this individual the power back, not by mentally trying to fix this person first. This person notices the best results when they are in a position where they take care of themselves with moving their body, eating well, and getting into educating on how to move, eat, and be healthy. What I want most of you to do is I want you to take a pause really quick. And if you're not one of these people, I want you to do a survey tomorrow. Go to your favorite fitness instructor, yoga instructor, nutritionist, anybody who's in the wellness industry. Pull them to the side and say, hey, do you have trauma? Because what you'll most likely find is that people that had trauma at a young age, especially from 0 to 8, that was abused or that was abandoned or that was homeless, usually they find wellness being their savior to the point where they dedicate their life to wanting to master wellness. And realistically, as they're coaching you, what they're really doing is they're coaching their younger selves. All right, so the second one we're gonna go for is a big one. I find a lot of these with my female clients, which is actually 90% of my business. If a person now from 8 to 14, you're in the fight, flight, or freeze, and then we're looking for reproductive imbalances or issues with an organ with this particular person, now I'm gonna find problems with their hips, their lower back, and their lower abdominals. And usually you can find a little pouch that occurs and a person can't control the muscular system of the pelvic floor. So now you can either find the same kind of issues that person 1 has down here with how their trauma affected them, but you may find that their glutes are gonna be tighter on this individual in the second column. So their butt cheeks are gonna be tightened to something we call at the Czech Institute heart bottom syndrome. So if you watch it from the side, the butt cheeks are just clenching the whole time. And that can be a problem for this individual. Now, as we go to the next one, this person emotionally is gonna feel unrelatable, isolated. Usually they put everybody in front of themselves. They don't put themselves first. They usually put everybody else in front of themselves. They hold back either all their creativity in the world or they're holding back their sexual needs or desires, or both. You can find this person, their biggest triggers come from relationships, people breaking their trust, and suppressing their sex or their art or their creativity. I'll tell you one thing, these people are usually the most creative people I've ever seen in my life, and they happen to be the most successful entrepreneurs out of my clients. When I have a client that has trauma here and we work through holistic lifestyle coaching and mentorship for business building, these clients always become the best when it comes down to building a business. But they're very loyal people, but they won't let or show you that when they first meet you. They're hard body. They put a front on. And they usually subconsciously, they can be a shielded archetype, something I created called the shielded archetype. They're not gonna just let you know who they are and let you in their life. They're gonna be, sometimes they look sarcastic, mean, or they're trying to avoid eye contact with you in person with the rest in B face because they're protecting themselves. Usually their trauma is associated with sexual, emotional, or physical abuse from 8 to 14 years old. Now from 14 to 21 years old, we can find digestive issues be the main thing. Now I know some of you are gonna be like, Nate, I'm starting to see a pattern. I got most of these problems. I got you. I'm gonna answer that at the end. What tends to happen with this person is the first thing we're gonna see with the muscular system is that this person is gonna be extremely bloated. Belly is gonna be extremely bloated, and what they may not understand is that every organ in the body shares a nerve with the muscle nearest to it. No organ has its own direct connection to a nerve. Meaning, if a person's digestive tract is inflamed, those nerves communicate with the core muscles, specifically a deep core muscle called the transverse abdominis. And the transverse abdominis is responsible to protect your spine while you bend, twist, and run. So when a person has inflammation in the digestive tract, that communicates with the core muscles as pain. So the core muscles turn off and it makes you bloated, which then will give this person problems in their lower to middle back, and they'll have tight hip flexors as well because of the kinetic change. So all the muscles and joints have to react to that reaction above and below. So as above, so below. The problems emotionally that we'll find with this individual is they're gonna be sensitive to criticism. They don't know how to say no. They say yes to everything and everyone. When they're judged or they see others doing things that they really wanna do, those are their big triggers. And subconsciously, we can find this person being something I call a people pleaser. Okay, number 4 is going to be trauma that can take place from 21 to 28. And I have a question for you. How many of you experienced a heartbreak from 21 to 28? Like the love of your life, like broke your heart? Or if you're still with your high school sweetheart, think about from 21 to 28, who did you lose that you love? Did a best friend betray you? Did you lose one of your family members that you dearly love, like a parent? Did you get your heart broken by a loved one? Think about that. They all connect. From 21 to 28, we go through the consciousness of love, and you can't be conscious of something until you become conscious of the polarity. You won't know what love is until you know what a heartbreak is. You don't know what hot is until you know what cold is. So put that down below if you had your heart broken from 21 to 28. So what we'll notice is that the organs and glands and parts of the body we'll look for is the heart and lungs. So high blood pressure, asthma, any problems with the heart and lungs is something I'll be looking for. The chest, upper back, shoulders, and arms. A person's gonna have most of their problems stored, trauma being stored within their chest, upper back, shoulders, and arms. And then emotionally, we're gonna notice that they're either too loving or not allowing love in. So they're giving a lot of love. Oh yeah, how you doing? Or there's someone who doesn't want no love. Usually they're not good with protecting their energy. If they're too loving, they hold grudges if they don't want love. So there's a polarity. We have to see where this person's out of balance. This person can be codependent, or this person can be cold-hearted. And then last but not least, heartbreak is going to be something that is going to be a trigger for this person. Relationships. They're talking to somebody and they catch feelings too fast, and that somebody shows them bad signs or doesn't want nothing to do with them, that triggers them. For this particular person, subconsciously, we're going to see a personality of someone that can be a performer. Usually this person at a party or an event, they're the loudest one, they're doing things for attention as if they're not really hurt. They pretend that they're happy, right? They're performing. They're not really happy, but they're gonna act like they're happy. Maybe they go on Instagram and put on Instagram story, or they're really good actors. They're performers, but you know they're walking around with a broken heart. If you didn't know them personally, you probably never know that. So anytime you see someone who's acting out at an event, just know that that person's truly, most likely heartbroken, who's trying to put a front on as if they're not. They're doing some form of acting. Okay, and then the next one is going to be the thyroid and parathyroid. We're gonna see trauma be causing problems with their neck. Usually they have something called forward head posture, so their back of the neck muscles are gonna be really tight. And these people usually are going to have problems with not being good with communication. Either they talk too fast, or they stutter, or when they go to talk, they choke up, because the emotions, energy emotion of the 5 layers of energy that are here, which is the nervous system being too much in fight or flight, the organs and glands, so what organ and gland connects to the neck? The thyroid and parathyroid, the muscles of the neck, then the emotions. So if the first 3 out of balance, what happens to emotions? They're gonna be out of balance. So there's going to be a blockage as if they can't talk. It used to happen to me all the time. So what tends to happen here, as I told you, I usually see a huge connection with zone 2, this part of the body where a person may have problems with both zone 2 from people that had trauma from 8 to 14, and then affecting people that had trauma from 28 to 35 years old. And then we can see something called a mask self archetype, someone who's pretending to be someone just to make sure they fit in. It's different than the performer. Usually the mask self, it doesn't have to do this whole big performance for attention. The mask self is basically you going into work and you having to be around people that you really don't want to be around, and have conversations with people that you really don't want to have. And you have to put this persona on to try to fit in with other individuals. And what tends to happen is that that's not who you really are. But putting a lot of energy into this particular version of yourself, it takes a lot of energy, to where when you go back home and you go back to trying to be who you truly are, you feel not upset, but you feel a disconnection there. And I can find a lot of these problems causing issues with emotional eating, because what happens is if you're giving energy over here to work and you're being this masked self in this persona, now that you have time, you don't have energy for eating this version of you, which then it creates this split of energy, emotions, thoughts, feelings, and perceptions, which can make it really tough for people. But as you can see, as I go through the board, it's real. Trauma gets stored in the body. Now you know how it gets stored in the body. But I know most of you are gonna have a question. You're gonna have a lot of questions, because I just brought you through a lot of information. The first thing is, you're thinking about first zone 6 and 7. Why didn't I go through the next 2? Well, because those usually happen at any time of a person's life, and they're usually a reaction from everything down below. But I will be having content for you for that. But so I know most of you are gonna be like, Nate, which one do I focus on? You just gave us all these layers of energy and how it's stored in the body, and I can relate to a lot of them, multiple of them. But which one to work on? Work on the first layer. And if you want to learn more on how to work on the first layer, click this video right here.